Bismillahirrahmaanirraahiim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Peace be upon all of you. Alhamdulillah, we're here again for another sacred text message. The verse that I'd like to look at today is in surat Al-BAQARAH. It's the 216th verse, which says, Kutiba alaykum al-qital, that struggle, fighting, obviously in our tradition related to defending the faith is prescribed upon you, that it's incumbent upon you. But then it says, وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ, but it's distasteful to you. وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَعَسَى أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ شَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And perhaps you dislike a thing and in it is much good for you, and perhaps you love a thing and in it is much harm for you or evil for you, or it's not good for you. And Allah knows, God knows, and you don't know. So this is a very interesting verse in relation to something that in traditional psychology was identified, and something I learned from a really brilliant sinologist and scholar, Dr. Cleary. But in traditional psychology, there was a real recognition of the relationship between thinking and feeling. That these are two capacities that are constantly in interplay in human beings, both from the external environment, but also internally. So we're affected, a word that people use today is triggered, that people are affected by other people, by what they say. There's a great story of a Pakistani Hakim who used to treat with ruqya, and so this physician had a patient who he treated, and then the patient got well, and the physician said, I'm so happy that the medicine worked. And she said, no, that medicine didn't help me. And he said, well, what helped you? And she said, the Hakim did a ruqya for me, and that's what cured me. And the doctor was like, what do you mean? He said, after I came here, I went to my Hakim Sahib, and he actually gave me a dua and did a ruqya, and that's what cured me. So this physician, he was a materialist. He was very upset about that. He wanted to meet the Hakim and explain to him that you're really misleading people. And so he went and visited him. And then the Hakim said, when he met him, the doctor said to him, all this mumbo jumbo that you're doing, misleading people, telling them that you can say magical words and they affect them and change their body, and we have science now. We don't need these things anymore. And then the Hakim said, you're a donkey. And he got really angry, and he started turning red and puffing up. And what do you mean? How dare you call me? I'm a physician. I studied at King Edward Medical College, and I'm well regarded. And he said, no, you're worse than a donkey. I think you're something else. And he started like just really, really getting angry, and he was about to explode. And the Hakim just said to him, he said, look at how these few words I've said to you have just completely changed your internal state. And they're only words. I didn't give you anything I didn't give you anything physical. How is it that those words could have such an effect on your internal state? And this is really about triggering and thinking and feeling. And so one of the things about thinking and feeling is that people can use them for really nefarious means. Like, because we're so susceptible to the changing of our inward states based on what's being presented to us, that people who have bad intentions can really do this. So one of the things traditionally that was understood, when you look at thinking and feeling, they're related basically to the emotions and to logic. So there's a relationship between the emotions and logic. And so when we have this kind of lack of knowledge of what's being done to us from others who might have real nefarious intentions in manipulating our internal states. So when we're unaware of that, we can really be used to, they can excite us and they can arrest our attention and take hold of us. It's a type of possession, really, if you think about it. So people can become easily possessed. Groups can become possessed. Whole entire nations can become possessed under the spell of people that know how to manipulate them when they have a type of unconscious vulnerability to these things. And so one of the things, this is what this great teacher taught, was that there's two classic models of emotional reprocessing, which illustrate how these differences in individual intellectual development are related to differences in emotional development. So one of the traditional ways of doing this was to rethink our likes and dislikes. And this is exactly what the verse is reminding us, that maybe you dislike a thing and in it is good for you. And maybe you like a thing and actually in it is harm for you. So this is actually telling us to reprocess the way we're thinking about things. And so if you look at what could be termed as emotional logic, so for instance, somebody does something to you and you feel sorrow about it. You feel sadness from it. And then that in turn leads to self-pity. So you feel like you're a victim. Somebody's harmed you. And then that leads to anger. So you start becoming angry. And then that leads to blame. So you're going to find a source of your anger. So you blame that person. And then that leads to rationalization, why you're doing it. Well, I'm justified in doing it. So that is a type of emotional logic where your feelings have really taken over. And they've taken over your internal state, and you actually have no control now over them. And you become basically a victim of a type of mind control that Denise Wynn talks about in a book called Manipulated Mind, which is a very interesting book and it's worth reading, because this is done constantly. And rulers and governments use these techniques to manipulate the masses. There's a Chinese manual for the emperor of how to control whole nations, and one of the chapters is translated as the art of letting all hell break loose. So there are times when governments will actually let what they call a purge. They'll let a society purge itself because they know there's so much pent-up frustration that it's kind of bloodletting. So it's like when you lance a boil so that you can diffuse the poison. So these are all techniques, but there's another model which could be termed logical emotion, which is where you're really reprocessing your thoughts, and it's a way of thinking that you can detach yourself. So something's happened, somebody's done something to you, so you feel this sorrow, but then you detach yourself, so you step away from it. And really, what's going on inside me? Why do I feel, quote unquote, triggered? Like what's happening inside of me that this person has taken control of my inner state? So you detach yourself, pull yourself away from it, and then you reflect. And that actually can lead to compassion, where you begin to actually have a different response. That's a free person's response. The first is the default setting. So all of us have default settings. When you buy new technology, they're always on default settings, and then you have to read the manual, the operating manual, and then you can actually set them to suit what you need that thing for. Well, we also come into this world with default settings. One of them is me, me, me. That's a default setting. That's why children scream when they don't get what they want. But you have to reset. And if you have good teachers, they'll help you, because you're like that new technology that they're going to reset the default setting and put it into something else. But the book, the operating manual for the human being is called the Quran. That is the operating manual. So you can actually learn how to understand yourself, and then you can reprogram yourself, because Allah tells you all these things like, وَإِذَا مَا غَضِبُوا هُمْ يَغْفِرُونَ. When they get angry, they forgive. Oh, so I don't have to blame and attack and it's like somebody who's been watching television and they think there's only one channel, and their whole life they've just been watching this one channel, and then somebody comes in the room and says, "What are you watching?" And you say, I'm watching the TV. No, what channel are you on? What do you mean channel? What's a channel? That looks like a really stupid thing to be watching. What's it called? Jackass? So you're watching people do stupid things? No, there's other channels. Here, look, here's the nature channel. Oh, look, here's a documentary about Mecca. Oh, here's recitation of Quran. There's whole other channels that you can turn on to. But if you don't know they exist, then you're just trapped in these empty, mindless states. So really getting out of the default setting is the life's challenge. That's what we're here to do. Because if you're constantly in a state of anger and blame, which is based on self-pity, it makes you susceptible to divisive and defensive feelings. And so people can manipulate you because you're angry. And there's all these people that a lot of their social work is actually personal pathology. So they're out there shouting and screaming against this, that, or the other. They're actually just angry at their father for neglecting them. I mean, I'm telling you the truth. People might not want to hear this. And I can speak from my own personal internal self-reflection and dealing with my own childhood traumas and things that happened to me and my own evolution. But I think I was once with a really remarkable psychiatrist from Ghana, and he was beautiful. He was from a traditional family. His father had been a scholar, but he had a PhD and he had actually MD in psychiatry. And we were at a conference, and I won't say which Muslim group, but there was a Muslim group, and they had a series of speakers. And one of them, he was just shouting in such agitation, and he was really going on and on about this, that, and the other. And this man from Ghana, he said, "Isn't it tragic that people can use public platforms to express their personal pathology?" And I don't think it wasn't like backbiting, like he genuinely felt sorry for this person, like he could see that they weren't well, and that they had this public platform. And so that's a lot of what's out there, that just people aren't well. There's all these unwell people. And so we shouldn't allow ourselves to be psychologically manipulated by people that understand how to manipulate us. And they do it through these techniques. And so one of the ways that people are vulnerable to this internal manipulation is this tendency to mix likes and dislikes with judgments of good and bad. So that's why the Quran is telling us, maybe you like a thing and it's actually bad for you, and maybe you dislike a thing, it's actually good for you. So this is one of the ways that you can actually reprocess your feelings and judgments by considering what is bad about what you like and what is good about what you dislike. And then when Dr. Cleary says when the exercise becomes an ordinary reflex, then it is much harder to be deceived by appeals to emotions disguised as appeals to reason.